You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, I am delighted to welcome Sunaya Sapurji. Sunaya Sapurji is a senior editor for The Athletic in Canada. Previously, she has worked as a junior hockey reporter and editor for the Toronto Star and Yahoo Sports. Sunaya and I found each other because of her article, How Hockey Became Hardcore, the often complex relationship between the game and punk rock from The Athletic, in which Chris Hanna is interviewed. On this episode, we discuss that article in depth, talk about how Sunaya's niche as a writer weaves her love of punk and hardcore with her love of sports in general. Then we discuss Dear Coach's Corner, Night Letters, and Back to the Motor League. Go find Sunaya's writing at The Athletic. It is awesome. Without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Sunaya Sapurji. Sunaya Sapurji, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
I'm super happy to be here.
I'm super happy that you're here too. And I'm a big fan of your work, a new fan, but I am so delighted to bring attention to your work to the listeners of this podcast. So why don't you just go ahead and start off and introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners out there so they know who you are and what you do.
So right now I'm a senior editor at a place called The Athletic, which is a subscription sports site. Right now I'm working on the NBA side. I take care of 4 writers who cover a bunch of different markets. I cover the Boston Celtics, the Raptors, the Spurs, Memphis Grizzlies, and the Houston Rockets. So it's kind of all over the place. But before I moved over to basketball, I was a hockey writer for a very long time, specifically junior hockey, which is like the CHL, the Canadian Hockey League. So it was like the Ontario Hockey League, the Quebec Hockey League, the Western Hockey League, and then sometimes I would do a little bit of NCAA stuff, not too much, but like the CHL was mostly my focus. So hockey background, though, working in the NBA now.
How did you get into sports as like an area of interest in general?
I don't want to say I always loved sports, but when I was growing up, I was surrounded mostly by boys, like all of my cousins and things like that. You know, when you're a kid, they were mostly boys. And so in order to kind of survive, I had to learn about sports, particularly hockey. And so it started off as kind of like almost like a defense mechanism. And then I actually grew to really love hockey. And I think when I was about 12 years old, I decided I was going to become a sports reporter because I knew I was never going to be able to play hockey or do anything that way. And I thought, well, the easiest way for me to be around the sport was to become a sports writer. So that's what I did. Everything from that point onwards was to become a sports writer.
That is super cool. So the life of a sports writer, I'm super curious about your day-to-day life. Do you watch a ton of sports? Like how do you even go about processing like this many teams and games and different sports? Like what is your kind of day-to-day life like in your job?
Yeah, so it's watching, like right now it's watching a lot of basketball. Thankfully I have League Pass, so I'm able to watch multiple games when they're on. It's also being on social media, just making sure, nothing crazy is happening or no one's saying anything controversial or whatever that we're going to need to write on. When I was still a reporter, I was going to games. And being a junior hockey reporter, a lot of it is going to small play, like Owen Sound or Sudbury, like that's the Peterborough, those are kind of the regular destinations. It's not really like a glamorous kind of, you're not going to LA or New York or those kinds of things. So a lot of the time is spent on the road, navigating snowstorms and whatnot and watching junior hockey games. And thankfully, the the junior leagues now have packages where you're able to watch um, streaming wherever you are. So that's been helpful, even though I no longer cover junior anymore. I still try and keep tabs somewhat on what's going on.
You've got this. Do you miss covering hockey? Are you happy doing the NBA stuff right now?
I'm happy doing the NBA stuff right now. I don't know. I have a weird relationship with hockey at the moment with some of the stuff that's going on right now that I think we'll probably get
I
into
believe we will.
into
Yeah.
later. But yeah, not that basketball doesn't have its problems, but yeah, I'm happy doing something new.
I have
Yeah.
been loving uh exploring some basketball stuff recently. I just finished the Last Dance series about the Chicago Bulls. I just watched Winning Time about the LA Lakers from HBO. So I have personally been on a little bit of a basketball kick myself, but I've just been really loving some sports stories to kind of my decompression in the evenings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, The Last Dance was great. Like that was
Yeah,
just such a good, well done documentary. Yeah, it was
I
really,
loved it.
really well done. Yeah. I
Okay,
haven't
so
seen
let
Winning Time yet.
Oh, you're gonna love it. I would watch it as soon as you possibly can. Obviously, there are critiques about the ways that the characters are depicted, so definitely like be paying attention like the statements from some of the players that are depicted and see what their thoughts are on it because it varies pretty widely.
Yeah, like I think Jerry West actually sued them at one
Yeah.
point.
It
So
did not go well for some of the feedback,
yeah.
yeah. But as far as TV goes, it's good TV. Okay, so we got some journalism covered. Let's tie in some other stuff. Let's talk about music. Tell me a little bit about your background as far as like your musical interests go, because our tastes overlap so much, and I'm just so excited to hear about this.
Yeah, so I grew up, I guess, listening to top 40 or whatever was on the radio at the time. Growing up kind of really before the peak of the internet, like it was really hard to find different genres of music. If it wasn't really played on the radio, it was hard to find out what else was going on. But I remember in high school, one of my friends had a Metallica tape. It was Master of Puppets.
Mm.
And I just became a heavy metal fan like the moment I heard it. And so that was kind of my gateway into harder or heavier music. The other thing that was so influential for me growing up was Much Music, which was
Mm.
our version of MTV. Like they had shows that were very specific. So like they had the Power Hour that would play, heavy metal. They had Rap City that would play like rap and hip hop. They had a show called City Limits, which was like one of their sister station programs that would look at, like new wave and kind of that kind of music. So that was really influential, growing up. And then the biggest thing for me was my last year of high school. I went and volunteered at a campus community radio station.
Hmm.
It was at York University, which was the university that I was planning on going to. That pretty much just changed everything. That was like a total game changer for me in terms of like opening my eyes to pretty much everything, like how I saw the world, the kind of music that I was exposed to, the kind of people that I was exposed to. Like that was like everything for me.
Did you grow up going to shows at all, or like when did you start getting into like seeing live music?
Um, Probably a little bit later. The first show I ever went to with like that I paid for with my own money was Faith No More in Mississauga, Ontario, at this club. And I remember just being so stupid. Like I went right to the front, right in front of the wall of speakers there, and I think I probably lost my hearing for like a good 2 weeks almost.
Do
Yeah.
you remember? Do
So,
you remember what era of Faith No More that would have been?
that was with Mike Patton. I think it must have been when Epic came out.
Mm.
So that it was that era of Faith No More.
We're like 89, 90, like that early?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Did they tour like right after that?
Oh, I'm
It
not sure.
was, yeah, so but maybe I don't think it was 90. It might have been like a little bit later than that because I don't know if I had my driver's license at that time. My math is really bad. I don't think I probably didn't have my driver's license at that time. I think
Gotcha.
I have to
Well,
do the
I came to
math.
Faith No More way later. I only saw Faith No More for the first time in 2015 and just absolutely fantastic as always, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a huge Mike Patton fan. Like I definitely had a crush on him when I
Mm.
was younger. And so when I did a story on Faith No More, and Dan Boyle, who was a now retired hockey player who was working for them as a roadie. So when I wrote that story, I was like, please, can I talk to Mike Patton? And they were like, no. So
Mm.
yeah, that was a
Uh,
bit disappointing, but it still turned out well.
what is your favorite Mike Patton project? Is Faith No More your number one?
I think so though. I really like Fantomas.
Yeah.
Like, because I love the Melvins, so that's kind of the best of both worlds for me. So,
Yeah, that Phantom
and
Us Melvin's big band record is absolutely amazing, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, no, like I mean, pretty much I think everything the Melvins do is awesome, but I'm biased because I'm a big Melvins fan. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to go listen to Millennium Monster work later on today. I haven't listened to that record in probably 5 to 7 years, so I need to go listen to the Phantom Oz Melvin's big band later on. Holy cow. Okay,
And they're
so yeah,
all so sorry. The other thing is they're all huge baseball fans. Mike Patton, Buzz, Dale, like they're all massive baseball fans. So
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, you're the way that something that I love so much about your music, and we're gonna get into this, but the way that you combine your love of music and your love of sports is something that really seems like a fantastic niche for you as a writer because whenever I read your articles on The Athletic, I mean, you have articles on Bridge Nine Records, The Melvins, Faith No More, hockey and hardcore. I mean, it's such a fantastic little kind of like world that you've carved out. I mean, how important to you is like the connection between music and sports in your own work? Does that kind of just like inspire you and keep you kind of keep you motivated as far as a writing goes?
Yeah, you know what? I think at this point in my career, I'm I'm only kind of interested in writing about things that speak to me, like that I'm interested in, that I would want to read. And like I really don't care kind of how big it is, or how niche it is. Like so uh yeah, like I like the Melvins, so I want to write a sports story about the Melvins because I know that they love baseball. I like Faith No More, so let me write this story about Dan Boyle. Like I love hockey and I love hardcore, so let me write about that. So it's kind of things that I would like to read, and at this point, I don't care how many other people want to read it. Like I'm just at this point, I'm writing for myself, which is kind of selfish, but I've been pleasantly surprised by the number of people who also are interested in these stories too. So that's been awesome.
I mean, that's exactly my motivation for doing this podcast. Like, I don't do this for a living. This is just a hobby for me. But like when we first started the show, our listenership was like really, really big at first, and then it has declined tremendously over the last 3 years or so. But I'm still working just as hard on it now with even though the numbers are different than they used to be, because it's just like an obsessive project that I have to finish. There has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end to this project, regardless if nobody hears it or at all. It's just one of those things that I just am compelled to do, regardless of how many people actually consume it.
Yeah, like I mean, but I think I've always been that, like, just thinking about it now, like I used to have a shitty zine.
Hmm.
And it was a junior hockey zine, and like maybe 10 people read it, like, you know what I mean? But I didn't care. I put out like probably 50 issues, and I didn't care. And it would take me, this is back in cut and paste
Yeah,
days, like it would take me forever to put together, but I honestly, like, I didn't care because I was just doing it for myself.
yeah.
Really. And if somebody else liked it, then that's awesome too. Um, but yeah, I think, I don't know, I've always felt that way. And I think that's probably why I got into junior hockey too. Like, not too many other people really give a shit about junior hockey unless it's the World Juniors. So at least in Canada anyway. So
Yeah.
like, it's a very, again, it's like a very small segment of the population that's actually interested in it, but that doesn't really matter to me. It never has.
Well, let's chat about a piece of writing that you did, which is very good, very in depth, and it's a long piece with so much detail and research that went into it. And it's called How Hockey Became Hardcore, the often complex relationship between the game and punk rock. Um, how did the idea for this article begin to percolate for you as you put this piece together?
So I think that idea actually started years and years and years ago when I was at the radio station. And so when I was at the radio station, I was a volunteer there, but I eventually became the sports director at the radio station. And that was like a paid job. It was like $50 a week, I think was
Hmm.
my, or every 2 weeks was my paycheck. Um, and I just, in the story, it mentions, that one of the posters at the radio station that was um, up in the sports department was of Slapshot. And
Hmm.
it's that iconic Slapshot varsity jacket, the Boston varsity jacket. And so I knew there was like a correlation there. And I had done a radio show where I interviewed some people about their love of hockey. The Zambonis were like one of the, yeah.
I'm literally wearing a Zambonis t-shirt right now. And I just have to say that because listeners out there can't see this shirt.
So, I interviewed two of the brothers in the Zambonis, and then I knew that there was another guy who was in a band also on Fat Records, and he did a hockey zine called Blood on the Ice. And so I had interviewed him for it. And so growing up and watching much music, one of the first, I think, punk rock things I ever saw was a video for DOA's cover of Taking Care of Business.
Hmm.
And so like I knew that they were into hockey too. And so there were kind of all these different things that were kind of flags like, hey, this is a thing. And so when I was at the Athletic, I kind of really wanted to explore that in depth. I actually didn't know how in depth it was going to be. Like that article is 6,000 words, which is
It's amazing.
crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's the fact that my editor let that go is like nuts. Like I cannot believe I got away with that, but I'm happy I did, but I cannot believe I got away with that.
Do
So
you do you ever see yourself doing like a book collection of sports music essays?
I would love that, but I
I
don't
feel like you
know.
have a compilation, like it's in the works. I feel like you could almost like pull these pieces and just like, put it out as a collected edition of a book.
I don't know if there is publisher like crazy enough to want something like that. But I would love to do like I would love to do that because it's two things that I really do love.
And it's
Um,
basically written. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
you gotta start doing it because there is a publisher that is willing to do anything. You just got to find the right person.
Well, maybe somebody is listening right now.
Yeah, hey, publishing people, do a sports punk rock and hardcore book essay compilation. Okay, so uh tell me about some of your favorite experiences of like interviews that you got to do while you put together this particular piece because there's so much music in this from the most well-known people to people that I have never heard of in my entire life. And like just tell me a little bit about the experience of putting this all together because it's so wonderfully thorough.
So the first thing I did when I knew I was going to do the story or I wanted to do the story was reach out to Steve Perry. Steve is like a wealth of knowledge. So Steve used to be the station manager at the radio station when I was there. He was also in a couple of hardcore bands. He was in One Blood and Countdown to Oblivion. And he's been doing a radio show focused on underground punk and hardcore for decades now.
Mm,
He was doing a show at CHRY when I worked there. He's still doing a show at CIUT. It's called Equalizing X Distort. And so he was a guy who I reached out to and was like, hey, Steve, like, what do you think? Like, do you think that this would work? Do you think I could talk to this person or that person? And so that's kind of how it started. And so I was just like, you know what, let me just try and see if I can. I think Stefan Babcock from Pop was the first person I reached out to. It was either him or Choke from Slapshot, only because like I knew if I was going to do the story, I had to talk to somebody from Slapshot, and if I could get Choke, then like that would be amazing. And then kind of my wish list guest, my dream guest would be Joey Shithead.
hmm
But I was like, I don't know if I can get him because, he's now a counselor in Burnaby,
Yeah.
BC. And so I was like, I don't know if he still wants to talk about, that aspect of his life, or, if he has time even to talk about, hockey, like, come on. So so when I got that interview, like that was like, I don't want to say it was a dream come true because it sounds stupid, but like it really meant a lot to me. Like
Yeah.
that really did mean a lot to me. Like, if my career ended tomorrow, like I would still be thrilled that I was able to do that interview. Like
I mean,
that.
that resonates so much. Like every time I go back and look through the guest list of like this podcast and my other podcasts, I'm like, I've talked to people with Pulitzer Prizes, like New York Times bestselling authors. I've interviewed members of Propaganda for like 20 hours combined. Like it's just amazing what this type of work leads you into because they're the types of experiences that like someday we'll be like dying and we'll like be like, I did that. You know what I mean? Like that's those types of moments for me too. So I totally get what you mean.
Yeah, like I got to talk to Joey Shithead about hockey. Like, how awesome is that? Like,
It's amazing.
like that was definitely a highlight for me. And then talking to Chris about hockey, like it was awesome only because I think he was able to express a lot of the things that I felt,
Mm.
being a hockey fan. So yeah, it was like that was like super fun. The hardest part for me was trying to figure out how to put it all together because there was just so much, and that's probably why it's 6,000 words.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it was a lot. And I think if there is one regret with that piece. It's that I wasn't able to talk to the Wright brothers from the Hanson brothers, the No Means No side project, just
Hmm.
because like I think they're such a huge part of that hockey punk rock like combination. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of a regret of mine that I wasn't able to pull that one off. Just because, I had been told that they were no longer doing interviews at that time. Um, so yeah. But I think it turned out okay, regardless. Like,
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So Chris's section of the article, Chris Hanna for Propaganda, his section shows up pretty deep into the piece. But what do you remember about just doing the article or doing the interview and getting to hang out with Chris?
Um, like I really enjoyed like I said, talking to somebody who is able to express some of the same feelings that I have about hockey. And I think that was same for many of the other people I talked to for the piece, but there's one quote from Chris that I kind of go back to all the time. And it's a long quote in the story, but it really like encapsulates how I feel. And the last part of that quote is, I'm torn between these two worlds of being resigned to the way things are and being angered that this culture I love so much is populated by such fucking dingbats at times. And I just remember when he said that, in my mind, I was like screaming, holy shit, like, yes, like,
Yeah.
obviously I couldn't say that during the interview, but like I think when you look at some of the things that have happened in the NHL and at other levels of hockey, I think that's pretty accurate. So I mean, I really loved being able to talk to someone who kind of understood that conflict
Hmm.
between liking sports, but also, you know, having empathy and understanding what's happening in the world at large.
Yeah.
So it was really refreshing for me, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Do,
And I get that too, because like I live in Buffalo and I'm a huge Bills fan, but every single week when I watch football, I'm like, watching people get carted off the field with broken legs and concussions. And like every week I'm cheering for this thing which is so violent and leads to so much like bodily destruction that I understand that conflict as well. Like wanting to, be a part of the local culture, but also seeing these people putting themselves in extremely dangerous situations and deal with injuries that they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives. Like that's crazy to me as well, too.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing I really enjoyed, and you will probably appreciate this, but for the piece, I got everyone I interviewed to give me some songs that they would play at an arena because
Ooh,
most of the arena music is awful. Like
yeah.
it's so bad. And so one of the songs he selected was off of Tina Turner's Private Dancer
He
album.
loves Tina Turner.
Yeah, Steel Claw, which was so different from what other people had picked. So I totally loved it. He also picked a song from Rush. I can't remember which song he picked from Rush, but he also picked the Supremes' Can't Hurry Love because he said that's the best song ever written.
Amazing. Well, if I was going to add a song, if you were going to ask me that question, my number one suggestion right now, off the top of my head, would be "I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me" by Whitney Houston. Absolutely love that song. So there's my out of left field selection for your hockey arena playlist.
um, yeah, you know what? If we want to talk about arena playlists, like it's pretty dire. Like
Mm,
it's really bad. I cannot tell you how many times I've listened to Jock Jams in its entirety. Like
yeah.
it is just it's brutal.
Like I feel like somebody at the Edmonton Oilers played Victory Lap by Propaganda at a game
Oh,
kind of recently.
so my understanding is in research for that story, Victory Lap was actually the Oilers entrance song for a while. Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah. So So
Okay.
there you go.
So I have an idea for a podcast as well. Or maybe this could be a series. So I'm totally just going to blow it on the air here. And if anybody out there wants to do this, or if you want to do it yourselves, but I have a vision that someone out there will interview all of the organists in the NHL about their musical trajectories and put it out as a podcast. Like I just want to listen to interviews with every single organist that plays for the NHL about like their lives in music and sports. So that is my idea for a podcast that I'm putting into the world.
How many places actually have live organists now? I
Oh,
don't
I
even
actually
know.
don't
Like, I
know.
don't know. Yeah.
I don't either. I feel like, I mean, for years and years, the organist for the St. Louis Blues was like my hero. I would go to the games and just love the organ music that was playing in the arena at the Kiel Center and the old barn in St. Louis. That was one of my favorite things about going to the game. So I hopefully that still exists in a lot of cities, but I actually have no way of knowing.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like I remember the Leafs used to have an organist, but I don't know. I don't know if maybe that's changed and so much stuff is done on computer now.
Ugh.
Like I don't know if they're just using organ music off of off of a computer now.
Well,
Um,
let's chat about a couple of songs. Whenever I have folks like you on to chat about music on the podcast, I always ask guests to choose some songs, and your three selections are Dear Coach's Corner, Night Letters, and Back to the Motor League. And since we're already talking about hockey, let's start with Dear Coach's Corner.
okay.
You in the article, you called Dear Coach's Corner, quote, arguably one of the most poignant songs featuring the sport, end quote. I would love for you to elaborate on your thoughts on Dear Coach's Corner.
Yeah, I think the majority of hockey songs, songs that are actually about hockey, aren't that serious subject matter wise. You know, it's fun, it's a kid's game, but I think this song is different to me. Like I think there's almost a sadness there because it's looking at the big picture. Like, yes, it's something you love, but it's something that is also being used to promote destruction and militarized worldview. So, like, how do you reconcile that? I think is a big part of that song. And I mean, I think it's a great song. Even if
Hmm.
you take away the lyrics, when Chris is like talking about I love this game so much I can hardly fucking stand it.
Hmm.
Like I get that. Like that really resonates with me. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in my article is how do you come to terms with that? Because they're so juxtaposed. And I think the way I've been able to do that is hockey is a great sport. It's beautiful, it's fast, it's exciting. Hockey isn't bad. The people who are in charge of hockey are the problem. Like
Mm.
sports aren't inherently bad. It's the people who are supposed to be the stewards of the game who are the problem. And that's kind of the way I've had to condition myself to think to be okay with what I do. But I think that that's it's just such a great song that's not necessarily fully about it's about much more than hockey, you
Hmm.
know.
It's a
So
family.
yeah, and I mean that's the other thing too is like, you know, Chris talked about the fact that the genesis of that song came from taking his niece to a women's hockey game. I think it was a women's world championship game in Winnipeg. I think during the intermission or whatever, these military members came rappelling down from the stands, which is in the song. And you know, I think she asked him, like, why do they have guns?
Mm.
You know, and I think that was like, you know, a valid question. Like we're at a hockey game. Like this is a sporting event. Like what is going on here? And I think that that's what's captured in that song like so beautifully.
Because whenever I think about how beautiful the performance of hockey actually is, if you picture an outside lake of like people playing hockey outside together or on like an outdoor rink in like a city park, I mean, it's so fantastic and wonderful in the ways that it can bring people together. But you mentioned the stewards of the game, right? So you're talking about like, the organizations like Hockey Canada, but you're also thinking about like the leaders like the NHL. And every time I look at the NHL, it seems that the fans are enraged at how the league has like, in their view, bungled something, right? And that critique comes from across the entire political spectrum, from the far left to the far right. I feel like everybody's got a lot to gripe about whenever it comes to the NHL's stewardship. And, there's been things that professional sports have tried to deal with, such as like certain social causes, like gay rights and fighting racism. What are your thoughts on that? Because for me, it's like I'm an outsider who only tangentially pays attention, but it feels like the NHL draws special amounts of ire from fans. And I'm wondering if you had any thoughts and comments on that.
I think there's no league that leads the way in like own goals than the NHL.
Mm,
You know, I don't even know what their thought process is a lot of times, but you know, all you need to do is be a good person, is be inclusive. Don't, bend to the will of homophobes. Like I don't think it's that, I don't think it's that difficult. And yet the NHL always seems to have a problem doing the right thing. And then there's sometimes when they don't have to do anything, they just need to keep quiet and they insert themselves and cause problems where there weren't problems to begin with. And
mm,
I think that I have a hard time understanding, particularly with the NHL, is and especially when it comes to like the LGBTQ 2+ stuff, is that it makes more business sense. If you were beholden to money, it makes more business sense to be as inclusive as possible because gay people buy hockey tickets, they buy
hmm
jerseys, trans people go to games. Like,
hmm
I don't know why you would, make your sport like exclude those people from, and not only those people, but people who support those people, like allies. Why would you do that? You're just cutting off, if you're so beholden to money, like you're cutting off revenue streams.
hmm
So that's never made sense to me as to why, like why they would do that. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. Like from a moral perspective and also a business perspective. Like
hmm
why? But I mean, they've always kind of been like that. Like I used to joke, I've stopped joking now about it because it's becoming too real. But I used to joke that if there was a way for the NHL to get Screwdriver to reunite for their All-Star game, like they would.
Oh my
Like
God.
that's, yeah, I'm sorry. Like maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that I used to joke about that. And now I don't, because it's becoming, it could, like, you know what? It could happen. Like,
You know, and what's so crazy too is there's like they'll like do the warm up jerseys and then they'll like take them away and then there's like the stick tape and then they'll ban it and then there's like I think it was Marc-Andre Fleury that tried to have a goalie mask that had a certain paint job on it and then they banned that from happening and it just seems like an endless amount of like punching themselves in their own faces.
right. Like, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, but why did you need to do this in the first place? Because like a small handful of people were uncomfortable wearing a pride jersey. So now you have to ban Hockey Fights Cancer jerseys. Like it's like the stupidity is like endless. I
Mm,
don't even understand that anymore. Like even at this point, like I don't get it. Like
yeah.
why? You
Yeah,
know?
my friend Sam is a massive hockey fan, and he frequently says best sport, worst league.
Yeah.
Frequently.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, hockey is an awesome game. Like I love it. I've spent most of my life covering it, but it's the people who are in charge, who are running hockey that are the problem. And that's not just at the NHL level too, like that's Hockey Canada. That's, minor hockey. Those people they're everywhere.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just I don't get it. Like even if they had done nothing, like they probably would have been better off than to make this decision to appease like some homophobes.
Right. Well, and there's a I would like to believe that there will be a generational shift in leadership as well. Because whenever I pay attention to people that are younger than me, I'm oftentimes very, very impressed. And I'm wondering if like the next generation of people coming into these leadership positions are going to be able to right the ship as far as this kind of stuff goes. Because I'd like to believe that improvement is possible too.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, but I'm a very cynical person, like by nature. So, yeah, I'm not holding out hope. But I mean, if it happened, I'd be thrilled,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not holding my breath on that one, Greg.
You have another article out about the topic in this song. It's called It's Time to Say Goodbye to Don Cherry in His Xenophobic Ways. And so you have directly addressed the topic of this song in other places of your own writing. And just what do you remember about like that particular piece and maybe how it connects to this song too? Because it's a really great article as well.
The thing I remember most about that piece is the death threats.
Mm,
Yeah, so a lot of people were unhappy about that article, but again, like I don't care. Like I write things that are, important to me. And that was something that was very important to me. And I think that's also why I really love that song because it's just that he was using his pulpit to promote things that never should have been promoted on a hockey show.
mm,
And that's essentially what Coach's Corner um, should have been is an intermission show to talk about hockey, and it veered far from that at times to things that you know that shouldn't have been broadcast, period, and shouldn't have been had no place being on a hockey show, especially with the number of kids watching. Like I grew up watching Coach's Corner, Don Cherry and Ron McLean, like thousands of other Canadian kids. And so yeah, and I mean, at that point, he had just run his course. He should have been. I think they should have given him the axe long before that. But
do you remember any of those those hate letters that you got? Do you have any examples that kind of just like linger
oh
with you?
no, not really, because I wish I could say that was the first time I had received hate mail, but like yeah, no. But I mean it's usually the same stuff, like go cover cricket or go back to wherever where
Others,
you're
so there
from.
some not so subtle racism and
Oh yeah,
things
oh
like
no,
that too.
it's never subtle. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, at least I can only speak to the hate mail I receive, but it's never really subtle. It's never about the content of the story. It's
Hmm.
always about my ethnicity or my gender or, it's that stuff. It's never actually what is written in the article.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That I wish I could say that I was surprised, but I'm not. Do you have any other thoughts on the lyrics or the musical performance of Dear Coach's Corner that you definitely wanted to share before we move on to the next tune?
No, I just love it. And um, I think my favorite line in that song, which I never got until later when I read the lyrics, was it takes a village to raise a child and a flag to raise the children, but
Yeah.
raise is like
Raze.
RA. Yeah. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, like wow, like that's I don't want to say that's awesome, but it was just you know,
Powerful.
yes.
It's just
Yeah.
good. It's just good writing too. As a person
Yeah.
who writes, like you understand like how good of how good of writing that line actually is.
And I think the thing I really love about Propaganda, and I'm gonna be honest, like their first album, like How to Clean, did not like it, was not a fan.
I
But
love to hear somebody say that because that is never the case almost on this show. Everybody's like, "Oh, I love the first two records
oh
so much," and then
no,
they got
no,
metal.
nope, did not like I just thought it sounded like other bands on that label. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I was just like, yeah, I didn't like it. And even the second album, I was like, it was kind of like meh, like, like I liked the lyrical content,
Hmm.
but um I just thought like it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And then I think it wasn't until Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, and like I feel bad saying this, but like I didn't even want to give that a chance because I really didn't like the first album,
Hmm.
and then when I heard it, I was like, holy shit, is this the same band?
Yeah.
Like it was awesome. And not to use like a junior hockey analogy, but like in junior hockey, they always talk about when you're talking about young players still developing, they always talk about like their body catching up to their skill because usually
Mm.
they're teenagers, right? So they have to fill out. And I think when I think of Propaganda, I think of that's how I think of them. Like they were that guy where their body had to catch up to their skill. And like today's empires, tomorrow's ashes is where I think like you started to see them fill out and I don't want to say they became more mature, but I just think they got a better handle of maybe who they wanted to be. And I think now they're all stars. Now I love like supporting cast, like just everything they've done since today's Empire's Tomorrow's Ashes, like I've loved it. Like,
Yeah.
and I can't believe it's the same band that put out How to Clean.
Yeah. I
So
mean, for me, today's Empires is when they became my band.
yeah.
You know what I mean? 100%. Like the first time I started downloading tracks off of Napster in the lead up to the record. And the first time I heard Bullshit Politicians, that was the first song I heard off Today's Empires. My mind was completely blown to smithereens. And then it was Albright Monument Baghdad, Back to the Motor League, Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. And then when I finally got the record and Mate Ka Marisa Kun Rasakan came on, I was just like, this is the greatest band that's ever existed in the history of music, and I am not persuadable to the contrary. You know, it
Yeah.
was just that's when they became my band too.
Yeah, like I couldn't believe it was the same band. Cause
Yeah.
I like when I tell you I didn't like those first the first two albums. Like the second album, it's okay. Like I don't want
Yeah.
to say I don't like it. It's okay. But the first album, I really did not like it.
Yeah,
Like,
that's fine. That
yeah.
those two
Sorry,
records,
Chris. Like,
I love Less Talk More Rock because I think it's their most important record as far as ideas go to what
yes.
they brought
Yep.
to the audience of the mid 90s teenage fan base that was listening to them across North America and Europe and everything.
I
I think that the
agree.
ideas are so important. I like it way more than How to Clean Everything, but they are so far beneath what I feel about every other record as far as like the performance and the
Yeah.
songs go. So I am completely on your team. And my favorite record of theirs is Supporting Cast, which you just mentioned, and which is your next selection, the opening track, Night Letters. Tell me about your overall impression of Supporting Cast when you came across it.
I just, it was so good.
It's
Um,
perfect.
yeah, it was so good. And it was so different. Like, I think they're a band where you can actually see them evolve. You know, like they're getting better with each album, and that was just that was like the next step for them, or at least how I saw them. It was like the next step. That is just it's a great album, and just starting off with Night Letters, you
Hmm.
know, like it blew me away. Like
Yeah.
it was just it was awesome. And then when I got to obviously when I got to Dear Coach's Corner, it was like, holy shit, like was this written for me? Like
Yeah. It's like, is this the best record ever? In my view, it is. Why did you pick Night Letters as your second selection?
So I picked Night Letters because I think it's just an awesome song, but also with everything going on in the world right now, you know, war, refugee crisis, it's just a song that has so much empathy. And I think that's one thing I really like in general is that their songs, the songwriting is smart, but it's also done with emotion and empathy. And I think that's um that's so important now. You know, the world today that's so lacking in empathy, and that's one thing this band has in spades. And I think that song is what 15 years old now. And
Yeah.
it's still relevant today, which I think is a great thing about them, but it's also a sad thing because the world hasn't changed very much.
Mm.
And so, you know, the fact that it's still relevant, I mean, it shows you how good they are, but I mean, it's kind of depressing at the same time. And I think, I don't know, just I think Todd's songs sound different to me. I don't know if everyone if that's true or if everyone feels
Oh,
that way,
it's
but
totally true.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And as someone who kind of likes hardcore, I think there are elements in that song that really resonate with me, just musically at that level. Um,
Did you ever
yeah.
like I Spy?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Is there anything specifically lyrically that jumps out at you from Night Letters? Like, do you have any particular favorite lines, or is there anything about the musical performance that really stands
Um,
out to you?
Yes. So you work the night shift, so you won't be alone. I am adept at cold. I've always loved, especially I am adept at cold. I think being Canadian, like I really resonate with that. And you know, you work the night shift, so you won't be alone. I mean, yeah, I love that. And then near the end where he says you were being crushed by the world. I've gotten lucky so far. Like I just think that I don't know who that song is about, but like you can feel the care in that song.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, it sounds weird to say it's a beautiful song because it's so driving and like hard, but it really is like, um, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
great song.
I love this one too. And it's a very complicated song too. I love the episodes that we made on this particular one. And as you talk about being adept at cold, I think about the different places that I've lived in my life as well. Like I grew up in St. Louis, which, gets a little cold, but like its summers are also blazing hot, like 40 Celsius in the summertime. And then I lived in Hawaii for a while and
Oh,
Mexico in the middle of the
nice.
desert. And now I live in Buffalo. And as I'm looking out the window right behind my computer, it's been snowing for 3 straight days. Like we're on the tail end of having that Buffalo Bills Pittsburgh Steelers playoff game postponed because they had to dig out the entire stadium. And it very well may happen again this weekend against the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's uh it's definitely something that resonates with me as well. When I think about the variety of climates that I've lived in within my lifetime. I love
Yeah,
that.
and I also think about how jarring it is for people who have never dealt with snow, who have never seen snow, who have never dealt with cold, like how jarring that must be, how just how outer worldly that must be for them, you
Oh yeah.
know?
Yeah. When I used to live in Saskatchewan. I did my master's degree at University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, and one of my classmates was in a PhD program was from Nigeria, and he would tell me stories about exactly that, like how jarring this experience was for him. And for me, it was jarring too. And I grew up seeing snow in Missouri, but for him, it was a very jarring experience. It's like he had lived in Edmonton and Saskatoon after coming from Nigeria, and it was a really insane experience. And he was doing it on voluntary good terms, not because he was trying to flee from anything like the characters in the actual Song of Night Letters too. So it's just wild to think about migration in general and what people go through. People like me who are, you know, totally doing it for different reasons, and then people who are forced to and they have no real say in the matter, and what that must be like. So I love this song for its commentary on just migration and human movement
Mhm.
in general too.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a great song. I really love that song.
Well, let's talk about your last song. You chose Back to the Motor League, and you told me this is your favorite Propaganda song. And so I just am wondering why you picked Back to the Motor League and why it's your favorite tune.
I fucking love this song.
Yeah.
I think this song, like, I I feel like I know those guys. Like, I've been to shows with those guys. I've been at junior hockey games with those guys. Like, I feel like I definitely know um, you know, the guys in that song. And I also had a shitty zine, so like I mentioned earlier. So maybe I was part of the problem too. I don't know. But yeah, I love the way it starts. Um, just that reminds me very much of just some of the people I know in junior hockey. Like it just that is definitely like a Sudbury Saturday night, like clientele. Like I know those people. So yeah, that's why it resonates with me. And I just, I love this song. It was on my like morning, like wake up, get ready playlist for a long time. But then when, I have an 8-year-old, and when he, got a bit older, I had to take it off, which made me really sad, only just because, it wasn't really appropriate for an 8-year-old because I would blast it throughout the house. So it kind of made me sad that I had to take it off my playlist. Like maybe Chris can re-release like a radio kid-friendly version of that song.
Well, and you get to think about when your kid is a teenager, you get to introduce them to the greatest song ever.
I am seriously, I have thought about that day. Um, yeah, because it's hard to a lot of the songs I like, it's hard to introduce to kids. So I have to try and find I found the Ramones are
Hmm.
like they're a really good gateway um into kind of the music that I listen to for kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, we listen to a lot of Ramones in our house.
I feel like Green Day is a next good entry. I mean, Dookie was like my first. From Dookie, I went to Pennywise Unknown Road. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like those were that was my boom boom boom. My immediate stepping stone was like immediately through Dookie, so that could work as well for you. So, I love it. Okay, so are there any like particular musical aspects or lyrical moments in the song that are your favorites from Back to the Motor League?
I've always liked Amish phone books, and I've never, I can't tell you why, but I've always liked Amish phone books only because I don't understand it at all. Um, so I don't know if you have any insight into Amish phone books.
No, off the
Um,
top of my head, I don't. I can't remember. It may be in the episode that we made, but we made an episode on Back to the Motor League like 3.5 years ago. So at this moment, it is out of my brain.
yeah. So I've always liked Amish phone books, but I don't know why. Like I don't know. It's just because I think it's to me it seems so random.
Yeah, it's
Um,
purely comedic, I think.
yeah, and it's super funny, and
Yeah,
that's why I love it. Like, and especially followed by drunken brawls. Yeah, it's just I love it. I love everything about that song. Like it's so good.
it's a
Even
perfect
the
song.
yeah, even the ending, like it's hilarious. Like I love it. It's
Stock
hilarious.
personnel, front
Yeah,
checkout.
Stock personnel. Yeah, and just yeah, it's great.
It's fabulous.
I really do. Um, I really do love it. Um, yeah, I mean, and also Amy Grant Mosh Cruise, that makes me laugh too. I mean, yeah.
It's 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 probably the funniest song on today's
Yeah,
Empires, isn't it?
it's it I think I think so. Like it's great though. Like I mean, it's also very good at what it's doing, which is like poking fun at certain segments of like the punk community.
Oh man. So when I did an episode with Adam Russell, who plays bass in the band Story of the Year, I don't know if you ever
Mhm.
heard them, but they have that song
No.
Until the Day I Die. Huge, huge hit single in
Okay.
like the early 2000s, 2003, 2004, 2005. Like that whole like emo and like emo hardcore like sing scream music
Right.
era that kind of yielded bands like Silverstein and Story of the Year and like My Chemical Romance
Right.
from first to last, that kind of stuff. So I had Adam on the podcast because he is a huge Propaganda fan and he picked Back to the Motor League as one of his songs because he's like, that song is about my band. And I thought that was so funny that he picked a song that just spoke directly to what he and his own bandmates were doing in like 2003, and he loved it, and we had such a good chat about it. So I love the fact that people can find themselves within this song and kind of just like point the mirror at themselves and have a little laugh about our own goofball proclivities.
For sure. Like I
So
said, I
funny.
had a shitty zine. Like that song is about me, you
It's
know?
amazing. Do you have you ever seen the band live?
No, I have not,
Darn.
sadly. I know. I know. It's it's on my bucket list, but you know what? Honestly, like since having kids, it's hard, man. Also, I live like in the suburbs, so it's not like first of all, in Toronto, like it's hard to find places now that will put on well, obviously not for a band like Propagandy, they'll always have places to play, but for smaller bands, like just finding places to play now um has become much harder. And then, yeah, I live in the suburbs, so that's gonna
Well,
be suburbs and kids is gonna be my excuse.
I go to propaganda shows in Toronto. Whenever they were there in May 2022, I saw them at Lee's Palace on Bloor, and then they
Lee's
played the next,
Palace.
yeah, Lee's, and then in London Music Hall in London, Ontario, and then they also played at the Guelph Concert Hall up the road. So my goal when they announce tours is to annoy you relentlessly and also try to get I'm gonna see if the band will put you on the guest list to get you out of Mosh retirement and come to the show. Um, so that is my goal is to see if the band will get you in for free. Because
I
you
would, you know what, honestly, I would happily pay for a ticket. Like
yeah,
that's not the issue. The issue is like if maybe if Chris can find someone to babysit my kid, like that would that would
maybe I'll bring a
be
babysitter. I'll
that
drop the
would be
babysitter off at your house and then
that
we'll
would
go to the
be more
show.
help.
And because then we would probably also run into Mitch Pollock, who works at with Q with Tom Power on CBC. So maybe we could have a journal, a Toronto area journalist party at the Propaganda Show.
That would be awesome. Like when I was doing my Bridge 9 story, like there are kind of rumors out there that because Bridge 9's 30th anniversary is coming up, that Have Heart might be reuniting.
Mm,
And so I told Chris that if Have Heart reunites, like I will drive to Boston. And I'll probably bring my kid too, because it'll be an all ages show. Most likely probably during the day. So yeah,
that would
I
be
will
sweet.
come up.
What's your favorite Have Heart record?
Um the things they carried for sure.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah.
Nice. So good. Um, okay, well, Sunaya, what a lovely conversation. I can't stress enough that people should go check out the way that you weave sports and music into your writing. It's a really special uh craft that you have created for yourself. One that myself as a niche podcaster appreciates deeply whenever I'm looking through your publications list. I really, really, really do hope that you make a book of sports and music essays just purely because like of how like unique and special that area of interest is and what a cool collection it would be. Like I'm thinking about like, Jessica Hopper's collection of music writing that she's done and also like the collected interviews of Punk Planet and stuff like that. Like there is a readership who of people out there who love punk and hardcore and sports um, that I think that would make for an amazing book. So I really do hope that you pursue that. But in the meantime, what are some other anything that you'd like to promote or direct listeners to as far as like following along with what you do?
Well, you can find my stuff at The Athletic. We are a subscription sports site. We were bought about a year ago by the New York Times. So you can also find us at the New York Times as well. That's about it. I don't really
Yeah.
have anything else going on.
I think that my subscription to The Athletic was like $1.
Yeah, if you catch the sales at the right time, it's only like $1 to subscribe. So
Yeah.
um yeah, if you like sports, I think it's worth it for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Um
and also I think it got bundled recently with my with my Apple News subscription.
yes. Yep.
So tons if you have Apple News subscription, I think that like a lot of the stuff now from The Athletic is now non-paywalled. Which is awesome. So I wanted to read like your all of your back articles, so I went and I did the dollar subscription, but like I get a lot of athletic stuff on Apple News as well. But your work is awesome. I'm so pumped that we got to connect. I love your thoughts on professional sports because these are debates that I constantly am having with myself as far as like my NFL obsession goes right now. So I love hearing what it's like in your world as somebody who follows it professionally and gets to think about it and write about it for a large audience. Like that's just so cool, and I'm so grateful to you for your time and your energy and your stories as far as like participating in a project like mine means the world to me. So Sunaya Sapurji, thank you so much for coming on Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. Means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so much fun, Greg. Really enjoyed it. It's nice to talk about something other than sports, even though this was kind of sports adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rare for me, so this is a treat, really.